absent.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kane,
Here.
McDermott,
Aye.
Slater. Here. And Parker's absent.
Open meeting compliance statement.
I, the undersigned clerk of the Board of Education of the Alva Independent School District number 1 of Woods County, Oklahoma, certify that prior to December 15th of the last calendar year, the date, time, and place of this regular meeting was filed in the office of the county clerk of Woods County, Oklahoma. I also certify that at least 24 hours prior to this meeting, excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, notice that the date, time, place, and agenda of this meeting was posted in prominent public view for location of the meeting.
Consent agenda. All the following items which concern reports and items of a routine nature normally approved by one board vote unless any board member desires to have a separate vote on any or all of these items. The consent agenda consists of the discussion, consideration, and approval of the following items. 3.1, addition of items of new business to the agenda.
There are none.
Minutes of the January 6th, 2020 regular meeting. Approval of the finance report. Approval of the activity fund report. Approval of the activity fundraisers. Approval of the activity fund inter-account transfers. Approval of the child nutrition report. And to declare the following items as surplus.
Okay, we'll start with, excuse me, 3.2, our minutes from the January 6th, 2020 regular meeting, and I did not see any errors from those minutes. 3.3, our finance report. Start with the first attachment that you have. That is a look again that I've showed you each month of our chargeables, our gross production, motor vehicle, REA tax, school land earnings, and county formula. Just kind of the same theme that we talked about. You can see the gross production, 808, over 800,000 down, 808 as compared to last year. We are up in our motor vehicle collection and our county formula tax. So just something we continue to monitor and watch each month, and a little better picture of that in just a second when we look at a different revenue sheet that I track each month. Then we have here at the bottom, I've also showed you this, and it's on 2 different pages, but this is our comparison between our FY19 and FY20 finances. And really we've leveled off in the comparative, when you look at each graph and compare them, it's very similar. So if you go to the next page there, Mr. Feely, and you look up there at January, excuse me, it's very similar to our FY19. And so we've leveled off there as far as collecting more revenue than our expenses. Any questions about that chart? If you go back to 3.3 and then open up the second attachment, actually the last attachment, sorry. So if you can make that a little bit bigger. If you look, this is monthly, what I do each month is to kind of track our revenue. We have that first column is our what we collected in our last fiscal year. The next column is what I project out. Our next column is the revenue we've actually collected. And then you have our estimate of needs that we get from Carroll & Associates, and then the difference between our estimate of needs and actual collection from our previous year. And so the very far column, what we started to do is to try to track from our estimate of needs the percentage of collection up to this point. And so you can see if you look at current ad valorem, we're at 87%, which is really good right now. If you were to jump down there and look at our county mortgage tax, we've over-collected. We've got 140%. But what I want to, I guess, draw your attention to is when you look at that gross production tax down there, 3110, 40% of our estimate of needs. And so likely will not meet that estimate of needs. So where does that estimate of needs in that area? But I believe we will overall, and that's from other sources of revenue, federal programs reimbursement, and then state aid. Okay. So any questions about revenue collection with that attachment? Okay, Mr. Feely, the next one is our investments for the month, and there does not appear to be anything out of order there. And so you can look down through that. Our activity fund report 3.4, Just have a couple of activity funds that you will notice an increase. Number 805, Coach Ball has begun to sell banners, and so you'll see some increase in the amount of money that he has in his account. And then 965 AMS Buck Bites, they received a memorial donation, which also increased their activity account. 3.5, we have no activity fundraisers this month. Want to thank Mrs. Durkee. She's done a really great job of tracking those. We'll try to bring some of those to you next month to show you comparatively over the last couple of years how each one of those fundraisers have done. But she's doing an excellent job of getting those in. Thank our sponsors too for getting that paperwork turned in a timely manner. 3.6, there are no inter-account transfers. 3.7, I have child nutrition report. And on that also, very similar when I track the revenue collection with that. So our revenue collection comparatively to last year, this year, very similar. If you will go down Mr. Feely, it shows our comparison with expenses, and we've mentioned this before, our expenses are up in child nutrition, but we've also added more salary to child nutrition this year. Okay. Once again, I want to thank Ms. Eccles for her help each month. She does a great job getting her numbers into it. 3.8, declare the following items as surplus. Those are some football uniforms that Coach Sklar is declaring as surplus, and they will then use that as part of a fundraiser for the football program. Any questions about the consent agenda? If there are none, I would recommend its approval.
I'd make a motion to approve 3.1 and 3.8 as presented.
Second.
Slater? Yes. McDermott?
Aye.
Kane?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Item 4, vote to approve purchase order encumbrances for the following funds for fiscal year 20. 4.1 general fund, 4.2 building fund as presented, 4.3 child nutrition fund as presented, and 4.4 gifts fund as presented.
Okay, 4.1, with our general fund, point out a couple of purchase orders, larger purchase orders for this month. Purchase order number 543 with Rosenstein, Fist, and Ringgold. That is contracted services with our school attorney for $7,500. Number 546, Language Circle Enterprise. This aligns with our strategic plan. This is some professional development for our Title I teachers. They were able to do this through webinar instead of travel, and so each one of our Title I teachers will be trained in Language Circle Enterprise instruction. Purchase order number 550, Gray Dog Mechanical. That is an open purchase order for district repairs to units. And purchase order number 551 is also an open purchase order. That is to Vendetti Plumbing for $3,000. Purchase order number 567, Brain Pop for $2,775. That's a computer software program that is used by all of our elementaries. And it allows them to integrate some lessons, to do some short, it has some short videos with them, and then some assessments. And so that is a well-used program amongst our elementary teachers. Purchase order number 571 is an open purchase order for $5,000 with Amazon. And then purchase order number 576 is Time Clock Plus. Time Clock Plus is the way that we track our staff leaves and also clocking in and out for our support staff. This is a renewal fee. We expect this may not be as much as it is now, but that's the amount that we've encumbered at this point in time. That number may go down depending on the number of employees that we have. Building Fund 4.2, EAS Resources for $5,900. This was a survey conducted at the high school. They were doing a survey at our football field and our north parking lot, and the reason we paid for this out of our building fund money and not through our construction manager / architect agreement this allows us, no matter who we use moving forward down the line, we own this survey now, and this will be a part of our district. So they completed that survey and have got that to the architect, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. 4.3, our child nutrition fund. This purchase order number 24 with Fair Plumbing for $400. That was to repair some sewer problems in the kitchen at Washington. And then finally, our gift fund, 4.4. We have a student attending Parker University. I believe that's in Dallas, Texas, for chiropractic school, and they have qualified for that Shared Trust Scholarship Fund. Any questions about our general fund 4.1, building fund 4.2, child nutrition fund 4.3, or gift fund 4.4?
I'll make a motion. Go. I make a motion, we approve the purchase order encumbrances referenced in 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4.
Second.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Slater.
Yes.
Superintendent's report.
Okay, we'll start first with our strategic plan communication. Mr. Feely will pull that up. Before administrators start, I shouldn't say each, but before administrators start, just want to thank them again. This has been a time-consuming process, and so we shared this presentation last week, and everybody kind of filled in their slide to talk about what's going on with the district, and so I appreciate their work on it. We've really accomplished some great things, and we've really been able to include people in a manner that's allowed them to be a part of that decision-making process. And so, again, it's added some committees and it's added some things to their responsibilities, but I do appreciate their work on it. So with that being said, I'm not sure who's the first person. Mr. Feely, go ahead.
One of our initiatives was to create a more robust professional learning community within each grade level. And what we started with was at the beginning of the year, the elementary teachers trained with a couple of trainers from the K-20 Center to create their norms for their meetings. And so the norms are basically the rules and accepted behaviors that would govern those meetings, like time limitations. Across all grade levels, that was kind of all over the place as far as how long their meetings would last. Some might be 20 minutes, some might be 2 hours. And so the teachers basically together decided we want these things to move very quickly and efficiently, and so we're going to honor everybody's time. We're going to honor everybody's opinions. We're going to share the leadership rather than put it all on one person. And the discussions would be academic-based and data-based rather than talking about scheduling, when a trip might be, or a party, or whatever. And then sharing instructional strategies. And those last two are some of the most important things, the most important discussions that we have in our PLCs now. So the elementary administrators got together and collaborated to create a common agenda so that all grade levels are talking about very similar things. And so they're on a 4-week cycle. The first week they talk about the state standards, and there is guiding questions that accompany those agendas. And they look at the verbiage level of the standards to assure that we are teaching to that level and assessing to that level of the state standard. In week 2, they discuss common summative or benchmark assessments like MAP testing, which is, that's not every month. MAP testing is not, it's only 3 times a year. So some of the grade levels have created common unit assessments, and then they bring all that data back together and they say, where were our weak spots, and why were those weak spots, and what can we do to address those weak spots. And that's been where we've really grown. That's been a huge thing for us, I think. Week 3, they look at a professional article. We've created guiding questions for those articles. They range from parent contact to writing across the curriculum to the growth mindset They've been through 5 or 6 articles so far this year, and we're keeping a running tally of which articles we've used. We've got a pretty good library of professional articles that we'll use in coming years. And then week 4, they kind of come back to their curriculum maps, and they revise those maps based on any instructional changes they may make based on week 2, their summative assessments. And then the administrators read through those notes on a weekly basis. They deliver a notebook back to the administrator, and we review the notes from their discussions. We've also added some PBIS discussions about, if we're having any issues discipline-wise in certain areas of the building at certain times, and they bounce ideas off of each other, what works for this kid and what works for that kid. As far as the high school, at this time, they have not begun PLCs pending further training. And then at the middle school, they've established times, but they haven't started as of yet. They plan on beginning their meetings next week, and they're going to use the same PLC template that the elementaries use. This was a learning process probably for all of us in creating this, but a really important one because it allows our older teachers to pour their experience and knowledge into our younger teachers, provides a support for our younger teachers. And I think back to when I started, and I wish I'd had a PLC to lean on. And so I think I think we've grown a huge amount professionally from our PLCs.
Thank you. That's good. Mr. Potter?
My initiative was school-wide enrichment, and that's a pretty broad thing. There's a lot of things that are entailed in that. I wanted to start by just giving a definition that enrichment gives children opportunities to try new and varied activities that may not strictly fit into the curriculum, but that develop character, resilience, and motivation and encourage them to pursue wider goals. As we were going through this, there are a lot of things that this entails. There's a gifted component that this entails, so enrichment means we can enrich the curriculum that we're already doing to offer more activities so gifted kids can dig a little deeper and find some things there that they may not have gotten had they just sat through the regular lecture and done some of those kinds of things. It also deals with the clubs and the participation in things that are not necessarily considered curricular. At the high school right now, there's 11 active clubs that don't include competitive sports. There are 6 at the high school, 4 at Lincoln, and the participation in those clubs range from 14 to 120 students. At the administrator meetings, we talked about the weekly meetings that we have. It's hard to have, in these activities that we included in this, these are mostly, they have a sponsor, but they're mostly kid-ran. They elect officers and do those kinds of things to do that, and that was real hard for the kiddos at Lincoln and at Washington to do that because they're just little babies, and so they don't really have a chance to take those leadership roles without having a sponsor that's most active role. So we didn't really include the things that they have, but they do have some mentoring groups and some things like that they do have activities that they do that are not necessarily math, science, history, and English and those kinds of things. We developed a high school survey, a club or organization survey to get input for new offerings. We had that, and we emailed it to all the high school students and had 69 responses. And so that's pretty typical. I got on the intercom and said, fill the dang survey out. And so they got on and they filled it out and did that. I think at the time I did one of my initial push, I had about 23 or 4 kids that actually got on and filled it out without me prompting them. And then I got on and told them, I need you to fill it out. And we ended up with 69, which is a fourth or so of our high school kids, which is not bad for survey stuff that we, when we get ready to start doing those kinds of things. There were some really varied responses in what we got. It was interesting to see some of the things. Shane, if you'll go over to the next slide, there was The winter action step, those things were fall action steps, that previous, so the winter action steps start now. And that's analyze the survey results, which we're in the process of doing that now. Some of the most popular club activity suggestions were volleyball, rodeo, fishing, TSA, robotics, and archery. One of the things that I was careful was with the survey is not to lead them into any, it was pretty wide open. It was like, what clubs would you like to see added? And it was just, they could put anything down they wanted to. Most of the respondents put that they were real happy with the offerings that we had, because we have some really good opportunities for kids at Alva High School and Alva Middle School. I mean, it's like they have some chances to go do some things, but if we could just think outside the box, what would you put down? And those were some of the things that we had on there. I purposefully did not put, there's kind of a push now through OSSAA with some schools that are with a gaming club, which is like, it's like playing computer games. And esports. And so, and there are actually some high schools in Oklahoma that the OSSAA is going to sanction this. This is coming.
It is.
And so, I didn't put down anything in that survey to lead them that way because I just didn't want to do that. But as I go back and if you'll go back and you'll look, there'll be some research, some other school-wide enrichment models, which are some different things. There's a Renzulli model that they go through and they talk about, it used to be way back in the day, gifted and talented, and kids could qualify giftedness based on a test score. And there was really never any way that you just, if a kid was an excellent musician or he was something like that, then you put him in GT because he was talented. There was really never any way to do that. The Renzulli model with the school-wide enrichment thing is a matrix that they use where a kid, if he has some talents other than scoring well on a test, can qualify for some enrichment activities to do that. So, so those are some things that we're going to be looking at this spring, December through March, to try to figure out some things that we need to do or who needs to be included in some of the programs that we offer. We'll discuss those findings with all the site admins and GT coordinators, and then we'll survey the high school students again for the potential recommendations based on those results. And at that point in the next survey coming, we will put down probably some of the things that they listed in there. There was, like I said, I just put the most, the things that were listed more than the others, and that there were a lot of different things listed there that kids, they would like to see a political action club where kids could talk about politics, and current events club, and wrestling, and just a whole lots of different things. Those didn't get, those were not, there weren't like more, there weren't many. I mean, there was a few wrestling things, there were 2 or 3 on that, but I was surprised the fishing one is something I'm really interested in doing that. There was a lot of interest in that, and it was mostly girls. I was real encouraged by the results of that survey to do that. But as we develop the next survey, my thoughts are that we will lead them a little bit into some of the things that they've requested, but also include that esports component. Mr. Lording, Trevor Lording, our new technology person, and Dalton Beeler are interested in that. We've talked enough. Mr. Argo kind of threw that out at the principal's meeting, and so I kind of threw it out a little bit to see, and they both approached me to be like the sponsors if we had a group. And so somebody in northwest Oklahoma was having a meeting, and they couldn't go to it, but they talked to the person that was having it. So they're gathering information on that just to see if that's something we would like to explore for some of our kids. We have a faction of kids that are really into that right now. I assume everybody does. But so what I thought with the next survey is we'll see about numbers and participation in some of the things. Of course, obviously, we'll talk about things that are viable, and then list the things that are viable and things that we want to explore further, and then see about participation numbers and those kinds of things coming up. But mostly just trying to make a school environment more meaningful to some kids. There's a lot of things several kids that are in school because of the things we offer, not because they want to be in school. And so if we can keep some kids in school and help our dropout rate, which in turn helps our school report card and some of those kinds of things, esports might keep some of those kids in school. And so that may be something that we can do.
There's a couple, the Russo campuses. There's the brand new center on the southwestern campus now, and one at UCO, if you wanted to go visit one.
Well, those guys, they have been in contact with somebody at Weatherford. It's
Okay.
somebody's into that real big down there, and they are kind of the leading edge. There's little factions in all 4 areas of the state, and they've been in contact maybe
It
with
was all
somebody
put in
that's.
with branded money, corporate money. It's really something.
Well, I know there are
Movie
some people
theater.
that do esports as a vocation.
That's right.
I mean, that's their job.
They're sponsored.
And they make, and they make
It's a
money
big
at
deal.
it. and
It's amazing.
So anyway, we
I know.
would like to look into that maybe this spring to get that maybe going sometime.
Let's go.
Anyway, sorry,
Thank
took
you.
so long.
Good, thank you.
No, that's
Good.
awesome.
Mrs. Tucker.
Okay, Mrs. Lovelace and I have the district-wide behavior plan. The positive behavior interventions and supports, PBIS, we've talked quite a bit about in the last year. Dr. Riffle came last January and trained our elementary and middle school teachers and support staff. And we started implementing it in the middle school and elementary schools in January of 2019. And then she came back and trained the high school in August in service. So they started implementation in August of 2019. We've done quite a few presentations at the board meeting with our PBIS and supporting our students with the positive behaviors that they're doing every day and above and beyond, and rewarding them and encouraging them and having set standards for each school. And so it's been very positive, and I think we have a lot of buy-in with our students and our staff and our parents as well. So it's been a great thing. Dr. Riffle is coming back, and she's going to evaluate our program and our progress, and so see how we're doing and help us make the tweaks that we needed to do to continue to grow that program. We also developed a discipline committee with representatives from each staff or site. Each site had a principal, building sponsor, and one parent on the committee. We met in the fall to look at our discipline data at each site, and that discipline data we took from this next initiative, one consistent district-wide system of documentation and discipline of incidents. We also wanted to get common verbiage. When we put things in, we weren't sure, well, what does that go under? When this happens in your building, how do you document that? So we came up with an outline of how each thing will be documented. And we document it in Swiss, which is tied to PBIS, and also in WinGauge, because that's our student information system. We thought when we got it originally they were going to talk to each other, and unfortunately at this time they do not. So we put them in both places so that we have that documentation. The Swiss documentation is, and I almost put a few pictures of it here in the slide, and I didn't, I probably should have. That's what our discipline committee looked at. We can look at that data. It breaks it down to, you can break it down any way you want. Where do we have on, what day of the week do we have the most incidences? And it'll show you. Where do we have more at in the classroom, in the hall, in the cafeteria? We can look at by grade and by teacher. And we can just look at, just keep on taking the data apart and seeing where the problems are to really hone in and fix those problems. I think my building, our biggest day was like a Tuesday or Wednesday. And you would think is maybe a Monday or even a Friday because we're excited to get out. And ours was like in the middle of the week. And so I probably had not looked into the data. I wouldn't know those things. I would just always be guessing. That's when it seems like it is. And you can look at, it's at the playground, which is what a lot of ours was at my building, is at the playground. And so we can look at that and really start to pinpoint, do we need to put in some more, rules? Do we need to put in some more eyeballs? If it's happening at the playground, do I need more staff out there? If it's always happening here, do I need to make sure I have a staff member? particularly standing at that spot. So we looked at the data, and you can look at it without student names, which is great, or with student names, however you need. But when we do a committee, we didn't have student names, so we can start looking at, is it the same kid having the same problem? So we can really then start really focusing on how to reinforce positive behavior. And then we also are incorporating in with that the district behavioral autism teams. It's a part of the district-wide behavioral improvement plan, action step, and establishment of a common language step. This, we were trained, gosh, my brain, was that last spring? Last spring. It was developed through collaboration with the Oklahoma Autism Center and the Arnell Grant Foundation. It's site-based teams that assist teachers in behavior interventions. Washington's kind of been doing this for 2 years already, or is this your third year? Through the Arnell Grant. And the rest of the schools started receiving training last spring. Yeah, it was last spring. And so Washington's kind of has a little bit more, I would say, organized system. Some of us are still trying to pick up in what that looks like in our buildings. The objective is to have team process and retention sustainability, provide specific evidence-based practices, coaching and modeling, as well as effectively evaluating student progress. Tara Warwick, she came just this last week and met with our sites individually to kind of look at what that looks like in your building as a, my building looks a little bit different than, Lincoln and the high school and the middle school in Washington, and how we have the same process, so when they transfer to another school, it's the same, but we also have to tweak it a little bit to fit the building and the needs at the time. So we've been working with Tara and just kind of what that looks like in our buildings. And she's meeting again with us, my building this week. I think some of the other buildings next week. And that's just been real great. That's through that Arnell grant that we've been very fortunate to be part of.
Very good, thank you. Good job. Ms. Martini, ICAP, and I'll do that one. Perfect. So ICAP implementation, that has been a buzzword throughout the state of Oklahoma to prepare our students for career or college. And so you can see one of the action steps that we had to do was to disseminate the ICAP information to all stakeholders. And so basically, how are we getting that information out to parents, to families, to community? And so you can see that in Ms. Martini's slide here, she has documented some of the activities that they have taken, from professional development to staff, from an ICAP overview and parent signatures, to a presentation by Mr. Potter at a community forum. Mrs. Martini wrote a letter and put that, or editorial, put that in the newsgram. A leadership team has been created at the middle school to begin to review and revise that ICAP each year. And then our strategic forums, pastries with principal, that was done by Ms. Martini, and then we have letters that have been sent out by Mrs. Eaton. So they've done a good job of disseminating that information. I thank them for creating that leadership team. One of the things that we found throughout the strategic plan is we are accomplishing a lot of these tasks. But it's so important that just because we accomplish the task, it's not a check the box. We've always got to go back and review and revise what we're doing, because things change. And standards change and expectations change from the state. And so we always want to be mindful of that. When you look at ICAP activities, AP mentor groups, they've started to use those at the high school. They've done an interest inventory, created occupation and educational pathways, research personality, interest in comparison with career options, and then they're bringing us in some speakers from various universities, colleges, and businesses. And so, Mr. Potter, do you want to add anything to that? Or?
One of the things just at the high school, that's really the only thing I can speak to. We have been using Oklahoma College Start program, and that's there's actually two. There's Career Guide and Oklahoma College Start. And we started the process because 3 years ago, we started that process with College Start to do that. And we have kind of ran into a few bumps the last couple of times we've used that. And so the last 2 weeks ago, we met with our mentor groups again. And Misty and I talked about it by Swanger, and we talked about it and decided that let's look at OK Career Guide to see kind of how it doesn't hurt. Everybody's got to log into everything, so it doesn't hurt to have the different perspective from one to the other. And so we had kids that re-log back in. I think Mrs. Kane starts that process at the middle school. So several of them re-logged back into what they were doing previously, and we kind of were happy with the results that we had with that. There were fewer bumps in the road. There were a lot of kids that, for one reason or another, were getting locked out or couldn't get in or couldn't navigate it like they should have, and so we switched over kind of to do that and realized that maybe we're gonna not maybe totally switch over, but we're gonna kind of meld the two together to figure out. Some kids may be comfortable in one, and some kids may be comfortable in the other, and we're gonna open that door and let everybody kind of do that together because it's an individual plan for every kid, and they need to be able to have some leeway in how they go about obtaining that goal at the end. And so we're going to open that up to them and let them kind of do that. And the last mentor group thing was the smoothest one that we've had so far. So what we did with the mentor groups, just briefly, is I had my secretaries give me a roster of every kid in our school, and I counted. I said, okay. Then I got a roster of our teachers, and I said, okay, how many teachers/staff members are going to be involved in this? And I just did the math and divided them out. We could have 10 to 12 kids per mentor group, and so we've got staff members working with those groups, but they have a place they can go, and we go at least once a month and sometimes twice a month to those groups. Where they can meet with that teacher, they can talk about scholarships. We actually had our juniors, freshmen are the only ones now that are required to do it by state statute. So we had our juniors and seniors come in. Mrs. Sunderland came in from the college, NOC, and talked to our seniors last time. We had another person come talk to our juniors about scholarships and those kinds of things to do. So we are taking that mentor group time to give them a good experience of everything they can do. So it's been a great thing for our school as far as having kids in a group of 10 or 12 kids, which is real manageable for even our, some of our pairs that are in charge of the group. They're comfortable. They've created some relationships with kids, which is a good thing for our kids if they can create a relationship with an adult and have a positive experience. It may not just be about an ICAP, it may be about a personal problem they're having and some things like that. It's somebody they can trust in our building to come to and help them with their problems. So we're seeing some break-offs of this mentor group thing, so it's not just an ICAP thing. It's been a real positive experience.
Mr. Potter, with the groups, are they locked all grades included? I mean, it's not just the seniors. Are there a couple of freshmen, a couple of sophomores?
No, they're pretty
Grade organized.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I just went. What I did is I took the group of seniors and went to 1 through 11, scratch 1 through scratch,
Okay.
and so it's that
Sure.
group
Okay.
to do
I was just
that.
curious. I didn't know how you came
That's not a bad idea. That maybe in the future we could look at.
With
mixing
advantages to
some of
that, or
those, because
sometimes the seniors have a lot of insight. The freshmen will go, that doesn't apply to me. They're going to go, buddy, that's what I thought 10 years ago. And
some of the things that we're doing though with that, if we're doing some scholarship stuff,
Sure.
those kinds of
And
things,
it homes
I
right
need
to
to be
that
that
group.
group.
Sure.
I need it to be
Right.
just seniors.
and you don't want ninth graders going, that doesn't apply to me.
Right.
So yeah, I understand. Thank you for that.
And I do know the middle school does that as well, because my son's talked about his mentor group.
Good.
So.
It's been a real positive thing. Real positive.
Teachers and advisors, have been lots of that, but it takes a lot of dedication and
Yeah.
control,
And our
because
staff-
otherwise it becomes, let's get donuts and sit here and eat for 15 minutes, and that's not what
And
it's
our
for.
staff, nope, and we haven't done that. And our
Right.
staff, it's been pretty academic.
Oh, yeah.
And so our staff's been really good about
That's
doing that.
fabulous.
Some are better than others,
Sure.
obviously,
Sure.
but even some of those that I felt like maybe would not be very comfortable have been very
Good. That's
They're coming
fabulous.
around and doing it right, so it's been a good thing.
Very good, thank you.
Sorry, I'm kind of talking.
No, you're good.
No,
It's
it's
good.
No, it's great.
No,
Thanks
it's
for
good.
mentioning. You guys-
Enjoy
you
hearing
guys are
it.
doing well. It's good. Just a quick update for me, and evidently I used the smallest font on mine. I didn't realize it. So this is just kind of an update where we're at with our facilities, and I've mentioned this before, and been fortunate enough to have Mrs. Martin put this in the paper for us. Those folks that have served on that facilities committee, and then the phase 1 projects. I mentioned that the survey has been finished by the EAS Resource Company, and where we're at with that process now is they've got that back to Tri-Arc, and Tri-Arc is beginning to look at drainage scenarios for the track. They are also going to be coming up and looking at the interior of the art room, and so that's really exciting. You know, Mr. McClure has one of the best, most enrolled programs at Alva High School. I would venture to say 120 to 130 students.
123 the last time I checked.
And so
It's more than anybody.
it's going to be a great thing to see that art room be renovated and brought up to date for those students. It's really exciting. And so they're going to come up this week and meet with Mr. McClure, and he's going to have some time to spend with them and give them some input about how he sees that design take place in that building. So we're excited about that. And then as we get through the process, we'll continue to update the board with what comes next in each project. So Mr. Feely, I have on the next slide just some things that we still need to do and maybe kind of where we're at with the process. The architect, obviously, like I just stated, is completing the drawings for those. Once we receive those drawings, I'm going to reconvene that facilities committee and just talk to them about their suggestions that they had and make sure that we've listened to those and honored some of those suggestions, and then we'll bring that to the board and ask for the board to approve those projects. On the next slide, some things that we've still got to do in this resources section. Transportation committee is going to meet. They're going to meet and look at, as we begin to rotate Suburbans and buses, and you know, we talk about a capital improvement plan for facilities, but also have one for transportation. So that will help us as we begin to budget, move forward next year, and then do the same thing with our technology. We've been very fortunate to be able to purchase a lot of one-to-one Chromebooks. We purchased some MacBooks for our desktop publishing, and so, but we've also got to be financially efficient and prudent with that money, and so that'll be a technology committee that will be formed, and they have been formed, and they'll meet and begin to review some of those things. Once we gather all this information, we want to have a comprehensive capital improvement plan that covers our entire district. And so it will be a great thing, I think, for you as a board to be able to review that and look at that. I know for myself as superintendent and even building principals, when you make decisions looking at purchases, it'll allow us to look at, does this fit what we said we needed it to fit for our improvement plan. Again, I want to thank the principals and our teachers and all of our staff for their involvement in this, for their participation. We are light years ahead of where we've been, and I'm just proud of that growth. Any questions that you all have with the presentation?
Thank you.
Appreciate that very much. Resignations, retirements, or reassignments?
We have 2 resignations. Mariah Rackley, para at Alva Middle School, is going to be moving on from us. Mariah's done a great job as a paraprofessional, has always been willing to step in where needed. And then we also have a resignation letter from Brandy Brown, our cheerleading coach. Brandy did a great job leading our cheerleading program. They had a very successful weekend at Nationals. And so I want to thank her for her time and her commitment with those young ladies. She did a fantastic job.
Any other communications?
Just mentioning that, you know, legislative session is going to be beginning, and in a week I'll be attending a legislative advocacy conference, and so we'll be bringing more information in March with any bills that pertain to education and how they might affect our district. That's all I have.
Thank you. Number 6, items of current business. 6.1, discussion with possible board action. Vote to approve the following revised board policies as stated.
So as we've been going through and revising our board policies, we've sent off, we've sent our policy off to the School Board Association to have them review that through their attorneys. And then monthly, they send us some revised policies that are important for the board to review with regard to current or new legislation. And so we have some new policies that I would ask the board to recommend, and I'll run through those. EMG policy has to do with animals in school, and it refers to really service animals. And so this just clarifies that for teachers, students, and staff, and really administrators. And so pending approval of that, then we can begin posting for service animals that they are allowed and permitted on the premises. If you look at EHBD, yes
Do
ma'am,
we have a service dog on the campus?
we do not, but we will at times, we might have a parent.
Gotcha. I
He
just
has
wondered.
utilized this one when they come to
We
the
see
building.
them a lot of places.
You do.
Yes, yes. And to be honest with you, Jane, when you talk about that, we've had some counselors in the past that have researched into the social emotional aspect of using animals with our students, and so we want to make sure we keep that avenue open
Absolutely.
in the future.
When it's appropriate, yes.
Absolutely.
EHBDVA is the parent participation. We currently have that on policy with the authorization for medication. What this basically states is that there would be no immunization without parent authorization. EIA R4 is student retention. This policy basically has to do with our Reading Sufficiency Act. It changed some terminology to align with the state law. They changed some references from proficiency to grade level targets, so that just aligns us there. FFG is the reporting of suspected child abuse and or neglect. Again, they clarified some language. Reports must be made immediately to DHS and law enforcement. And so we need to adopt that policy for clarification. CHC bids and quotations. This just gives some local school board some preference with local bidders. But when you read on down through that, local bid means in the state of Oklahoma. And so, again, this is the advantage now that we have a construction manager and we have an architect that will help us work our way through these bidding processes. And so I feel really confident in the adoption of this policy as they will follow and comply with this law. And then CHCB, the selection of a construction manager. This was a new law, that House bill that was passed in our last legislative session. We followed this. Our current construction manager that was hired is on the Office of Management Enterprise Service Construction and Property list. We complied through all this, but now this actually adds that policy officially to our board policy. So we feel confident with that also. DEEC and FMC are two policies that, on recommendation from the school board, we adopt. They have to do with student activities, expense reimbursement, and student clubs and organizational sponsors. And what those policies will do, they cross-reference with our current reimbursement and just outline that and make that more clear for those that are participating. The student clubs and organization sponsors, it kind of ties in really with the work that we've done with strategic plan, notification of parents of what we do offer, and just ensuring that we do that. You know, we put some of those things in the handbook, but is it noticeable, and are we updating that? Are we communicating that clearly? So this policy puts some backing behind doing that. And then EKDA is reading sufficiency testing. Again, talks about removing those references to proficiency and creating grade level target. Also modified the language. We assess those students from kinder through third grade with a screening at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the year to track progress. And so that's a required update to our current policy. And I might add our early childhood in Longfellow Elementary do a fantastic job with the Reading Sufficiency Act. I would put us up against anybody in the pass rate of that. Those teachers just do a fantastic job year in and year out. Any questions about these policies that I've recommended for approval?
The animals in school, EMG,
Yes.
does it clarify, I couldn't tell reading through it, clarifying what type of certification would be the minimum standard for a service animal?
No, it does not. Normally, that's a great question, Shane. Normally, there's not any clarification. I think one of the things that we look for as administrators is that service dog being identified as a service dog, and that's kind of the standard that we've used. One of the things that states in there is through working with the superintendent, exceptions can be made. And so I think that if there's ever, we've run into this before, with having a service dog that has been needed, but maybe we haven't had the appropriate documentation on file.
Yeah.
And so we've met with that family or with that parent and been able to come with some compromise, but I think this kind of sets it down in writing, how we would use that. Certainly, if you didn't want to accept that policy as is, we could go back and ask for clarification on that, I think. Any other questions?
Accept the motion?
I'll make the motion that we accept the, where are these now? He's talked so much, he's confused me. Sorry. Policies as presented and updated for the past as presented, yes. 6.1, yes, thank you, Jane.
Second?
Second.
Slater,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Kane,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
6.2, discussion with possible board action, vote to rescind the following board policies, DNA-P and DNAA-P.
And these policies can be rescinded because stated in them, they're using some measures for evaluation of not only teachers and principals that are no longer required by state statute. One of the policies used the terminology OAM. A few years back, they called that, it was the other academic measures, and really what that was going to entail, they were going to take test scores and apply that to teacher and principal evaluations. And so, as you know, that has been rescinded and we no longer need that policy in our board policy manual.
I move that we rescind the policies referenced in 6.2.
Second.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Slater.
Yes.
6.3, discussion with possible board action, vote to approve an out-of-state travel request for the Alva High School and Middle School track teams to participate in Kansas track meets at South Barber and Chaparral on March 30th, 2020, April 14th, 2020, and April 16th, 2020.
Mr. Sklar is ahead of the game in getting in travel requests turned in early, and I appreciate that. These are routine track meets we've attended for as long as I can remember, and so I would recommend to the board that we approve these.
Make a motion we approve that travel out of state.
Second.
Slater,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Kane,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
6.4, discussion with possible board action, vote to approve an out-of-state travel request for Longfellow Elementary to travel to Wichita, Kansas to attend the Sedgwick County Zoo on May the 7th, 2020.
Thank Mrs. Tucker and her staff for planning and again, also getting ahead of schedule and getting this on the agenda. I appreciate that. I believe this is the third year that they've done this field trip, and so I would recommend its approval.
Motion we approve 6.4.
Second.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
McDermott,
Aye.
Slater.
Yes.
7, proposed executive session to discuss the evaluation and the employment of Tim Argo, superintendent, for 25 Oklahoma State Statute, Section 307B1.
I make a motion. Then we go into executive session.
Second.